If your deadline is November 2023, unless you could somehow get an extension, but you're probably not going to be able to get an extension unless you show progress to the state. If you were to go down the path of doing this project, it's going to take probably up to a year to design the system and then 2 years to get it built and operational. So, you know, the clock is ticking somewhat, but at this point, we're still okay. So a pilot study is basically a small-scale system that would be brought into the plant, and the operators could run the system, get used to the system, and then we could show the state that, yes, this will work. And then the fourth recommended next step would be consider forming a stakeholder group and having some meetings and input from people that are most impacted by this potential change in the water quality, like your large users, people in the plumbing community, the water softener folks, just so we can educate the public and educate those people on what we're talking about. So,
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
From previous, I have, we know that 60% of the usage is industry.
Mm-hmm.
We know that 40% is residential. Is that how the wastewater is also, I mean, is 60% of the violation count, or does that number change? Because I know, for instance, Wells has taken some very major steps in softener reduction.
Yep.
Or so I mean in reducing the soil. I know they have.
Yep.
Okay. But I don't know where the car washes are, or whoever else.
Right.
So is the waste is it still a 60-40 split?
About 50-50
on the violation side?
So I think because of the improvements Wells has done, the amount of industrial chlorides in the wastewater has come down, the percentage. So and the wastewater plant did some testing on the industrial wastewater and the residential wastewater, and it was about 50-50. So 50% of the chlorides in the wastewater come from large users, 50% come from everybody else.
Right, and then just in committee, I know we've talked about this option too. If we have 3,600 homes in Lamar's Isle, and we would actually give them a coupon of some sort at the city level, $250, $350 each, to replace softeners with high efficiency softeners, that would cost the city far less money and hopefully achieve at least a similar result. Because I know for a fact that the Goodchild household, when we went from a timer softener, our rental on the metered system was a few dollars a month more, but my salt savings was probably cut by 2/3. So I'm spending less because I'm using a high efficiency. I know Scott Lionel said the exact same thing. He said when he did that, it was cut amazingly. So the city could give some sort of incentive to homeowners to get rid of those old softeners and hopefully achieve somewhat of the same result.
Sure. And I think
I have no idea. I don't.
You know,
That survey would tell us.
the research we've done, I mean,
to
replace a current softener with the high efficiency unit, if you were to pay for it all at once, and I don't know how the softener companies would do it, they might give you time to pay it off, but it's about $3,500. So
To buy one.
to buy, yeah. What the water softener companies do is they probably spread that cost out over, you pay it off over a year or two.
yeah.
But yeah, the list price on those high efficiency units is $2 to $3 grand.
Sure.
But
Well, it's just.
yeah.
Yeah, so, like you said, there is no actual motion, it's just acknowledge that the thing is done. I would not, in page 16, Michael goes through some of the next steps. The next subject, next action item we talk about will be well 14. That pilot study, I suggest we hold off, at least until I get with Bolton and Macon, see how far along we are on that end. And then, yeah, so nothing's going to be by April next step is that survey to go out on the wastewater.
Any other questions?
Motion to acknowledge the water softening evaluation and water system plan update as performed by McClure Engineering.
Second.
Motion made and second to acknowledge the water softening evaluation and water system plan update as performed by McClure Engineering Incorporated. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, moving on to number 1214. Attached is an amendment, number 2, to the agreement. Thanks a lot, by the way.
Yeah.
No problem, thank you. Appreciate working with.
Attached is amendment to number 2 to the agreement for engineering services with McClure Engineering for water system improvements. The amendment pertains to preparation of well number 14, bidding documents, and construction services. If approved, the proposed schedule would be as follows. We'll set a hearing for February 4th, 2020, while a public hearing, February 18th, 2020. Have a bid letting March 17th, 2020, and award the contract April 7th, 2020, with a projected completion date of December 20th, 2020. Recommendation is that the Public Utility Committee met on December 5th in 2019 and recommends a proceeding with the project. The financing, the cost for engineering services is $125,400, while estimate of the project is $1,617,000. The well project is included in the Lamar's Urban Renewal Plan. Therefore, it is anticipated TIF funds could be used. Questions?
TIF funds be used for engineering too? Mr. Jason?
Yeah.
Okay. And that, on 125, is that negotiable? Since he's here? Or have we negotiated already?
That's a very good point.
I mean, is it a Tuesday? Is it a coupon day?
I guarantee we've been looking at this for the last couple of years. If we wait another year, it's gonna go up, I'm sure of that.
Well,
I just said-
my positive comment.
My only comeback is we designed this in 2012, and it's been 7 years. We haven't brought any amendments or.
Well, and also it's
We're all
normally
ready to be
10%, and you're less than 10%, so
I,
I'm gonna make a motion to authorize amendment to the agreement for engineering service system for engineering company to prepare well 14 bidding documentation and construction services not to exceed $125,000.
Second motion.
Motion made and second to authorize the amendment number 2 to the agreement of engineering services with McClure Engineering to prepare well number 14 bidding documents and construction services with not to exceed a fee of $125,400. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
thank you.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. You bet.
Come back again, you drew a big crowd today.
Yeah.
He was worried a little bit.
Well, I hear the stories of the last time we talked about softening, so.
Oh, that crowd was nothing compared to what you did.
We had a crowd at the convention center when we talked about a lot of stuff. There was 200 chairs up, and some of us were sitting on the floor.
Some of us are looking for the exit.
Yeah, we were sitting next to the exit, Mr. Nelson. That was not pleasant. So we went from one end of the pipe to the other end there, so go on.
All right.
We're on the sewer end side now.
I got some papers here. I can't even find where the hell I'm at.
There you go, there you go. There, we're
just a
gonna
minute.
pass all those motions for the sewer. That's where you are.
D14. At the December 17th, 2019 meeting, the council approved the first reading of ordinance number 956 on proposed changes to Chapter 100 Industrial Sewer Usage Compliance Enforcement of the Lamar's Code of Ordinances. Attached is the ordinance specifying the changes. TNK ammonia nitrogen has a measurable discharge limit in the city's discharge permit, as well as an individual agreement with Wells Enterprises and Dean's Foods. However, has not been referenced in Chapter 100. The amendment adds TNK to the chapter. The amendment also addresses administrative penalty charges, and all listed charges are being proposed to double. The recommendation is that the Public Utilities Committee met on December 5th, 2019, and is recommending the proposed charges. Questions from you?
Well, I want to make sure, I don't know if I explained it in the greatest way last time. TKN, we've always tested for, and we've always billed for the treatment of it, right? Because it's been in our Chapter 99. But we have not fined anybody for it until our new permit came out. So that's the reason it's having to go in Chapter 100, which is basically our fine chapter. And the whole process is they do the testing, which is once a week. Those reports go to the DNR, and they come to City Hall here. So when we create the invoice for them, we have those numbers. You know, and then if the quantities are in excess, then they get a letter. And I'm just talking strictly Wells and Dean Foods. They get a letter telling them they're in violation, and then it asks them to basically explain why did it happen and what are you going to do to fix it. Okay? Plus it comes with a fine. So that's how it's worked in the past, and that's how it will work now. And then just for your information, Angie ran some numbers on the fines, the penalties themselves. In 2019, Wells exceeded 7 out of 12 months. Dean Foods exceeded 9 out of 12 months. Okay, and the fines were 719 and 1150. Those were their fines. So what's being proposed is essentially, if that stayed the way it is, those totals would double. So,
And Wells was at that meeting, committee meeting, and they had no objection to the price going up double, because it's still a very minor amount of money.
Yeah, and I have been notifying them. I notified them before we were going to start this process. I notified them after the council approved the first reading, and I'll keep notifying them until it's of the actions here. So,
is there lack of attendance reflection on the fact that these fines are basically, they can't fix the problem for what they can pay the fine for? Exactly. So, I mean, are the fines even?
I think we went through that last time. I don't think, I mean, even doubling them, it's still minimal.
Motion to approve the second reading ordinance number 956 to amend Lamar's Code of Ordinance, Chapter 100, Industrial Sewer User Compliance Enforcement.
Second.
Motion made and second to approve the second reading of the ordinance 956 to amend the Mars City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 100, Industrial Sewer Usage Compliance Enforcement. Do we have a roll call on that, Bev?
Donlin?
Yes.
Knapp?
Yep.
Nelson?
Yes.
Goodchild?
Yes.
Wick?
Yes.
Motion to waive the third reading ordinance 956 to amend Lamar's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 100, Industrial Sewer User Compliance Enforcement.
Is there a second? Motion made and second to waive the third reading of the ordinance 956 to amend the Lamar's Code of Ordinance, Chapter 100, Industrial Sewer User Compliance Enforcement. We have a roll call on that, Bev?
Donlin?
Yes.
Knapp?
Yep.
Nelson?
Yes.
Goodchild?
Yes.
Wick?
Yes. Motion to adopt ordinance number 956 to amend Lamar's Code of Ordinance, Chapter 100, Industrial Sewer Use Compliance Enforcement on its second reading.
Second.
Motion made second to adopt the city ordinance, or the ordinance number 956 to amend this the Water Code of Ordinances, Chapter 100, Industrial Sewer Usage Compliance, Enforcement to the second reading. We have a roll call on that, Jeff?
Conlon?
Yes.
Knapp?
Yep.
Nelson?
Yes.
Goodchild?
Yes.
Wade?
Motion carried. Okay. Moving on to discussion. Mike, do you have anything on the discussion there?
No, I don't.
Okay. Clark?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Rex?
No, thank you.
Nothing.
Okay.
Just commending everybody for their process today,
Yes.
and to realize that the committee did put time, effort, thought into the process, and it went well.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
And not just the committee, I might add.
I wanna also thank you council members for, working on this and dealing with it and using good judgment. So, thank you very much.
It's a good process. It's worked well for the police department and Clark and all their other departments, so it's a good process.
We're headed down the right road. Okay, moving on then to, city administrators. Kevin, or,
I don't have much, because Greg's gonna give his annual report, but I just want to give an update. CWC, that project is still moving forward. We had a pre-bid meeting at the site this morning. That gives an opportunity for any potential bidder, so a contractor can come and actually see it and ask questions and get them answered. And so that was this morning.
is the final plans?
Yeah, everything is out, it's out for bid.
It is out for bid.
Yeah, so the next time this council will see it will be February 4th. But the bids are due January 21st.
The what?
Bids are due January 21st.
All right.
So they will go through those, and then contracts and that stuff will come to council on the 4th of February.
Okay.
So with that, I turn it over to.
Wait, anything on parks? You know, for a while there, we were exploring maybe different contractors, one was out in New York. Any update on where you're at on that whole
Talking about the
city?
Cleveland Center?
Yeah,
Or Cleveland Park?
Cleveland and down at O'Toole. Any updates there, Jason, at all?
No, not really.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
we'll discuss it more when we get into our
Budget committee.
budget.
All right, that's fine, that's fine. Good enough.
So with that,
I'm done.
Greg Schmidt.
Okay.
Done? Yep.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, City Administration staff. In front of you is the Code Enforcement Building Department yearly statistics, primarily in the building area. What a phenomenal year we've had for building, especially in the new home construction. Very first page shows the residential fees and construction valuation that have been taken in during the last 10 years. If you look at last year's residential fees that were brought in, just in the home construction, not quite, but almost doubled. And that same figure is reflected in the construction valuation of homes. Last year, the valuation was $4.5 million as compared to right at 8.3 this year. So what a huge increase, the best year we've had in 10 years. Page 2 is a reflection of the same thing, only in the commercial sector. The fees that were brought in are pretty steady. Last several years, we've been in the double digit, tens, thousands, 10, 11,000, which is the same that we had this year. Fairly consistent. We were about, 900,000 short from last year. But as we'll progress through the pages here, you'll actually see our commercial construction increase substantially, but I'll get to that. So some of these numbers are really reflective of very large multi-million-dollar projects over the years. So the next page is showing the actual permits that were issued in both the single-family dwellings and the commercial sector for the past 10 years. It's in number forms at top, and then 2 different graphs just showing how things have increased. And again, it's 29 single-family homes this year with 11 commercial. But I'll get to the commercial part here in just a moment, probably on the next page. So it's just a good comparison.
Does the condo count as 2, Greg, single-family dwellings?
Yes,
Okay, I figured that.
it's one building, but 2
No, I
dwellings.
get that, I just
So,
wanted to see if it was under commercial.
correct,
Okay,
yep,
Okay, go
yep.
ahead.
The next page is showing the total building permits and fees for all permits that I've issued through my office. This year was 134 permits, fees taken in, revenue taken in 83,000, construction costs at 15, almost $16 million. Last year, 126 permits issued, so it's fairly consistent. But our fees were up by $20,000, and our construction valuation, up $2.5 million. A lot of the commercial fees or permits that were issued were for smaller commercial structures as compared to previous years. Well, what I've seen this year in commercial construction was a lot of storage units. A lot of storage units going up in the KNS JV edition. Dogwood Enterprises is putting up one. Another individual is putting up 5. So that really brought up the commercial permits, but the structure valuation and fees that were taken in because of those is not great. So, they're good, but I mean, that's why it's somewhat steady, I guess. Urban revitalization, which is something you guys have requested last year when I gave my presentation, and I worked on it immediately following the meeting. And this is showing from the inception of our urban renewal or urban revitalization tax exemption program since 2012, and the numbers that were brought in during this time period. So